Hi everyone, welcome to the third episode of A Very Queer Book Club. This week I'm sitting down with Becky Albertalli, the incredible author behind the Simonverse series. If you still need to purchase your copy of Love Creekwood or anything else from the Simonverse series, you can do so at the link in the description below to purchase those from Karis Books and more in Atlanta. Just so you know, this interview will include a couple spoilers for Simon versus the Homo Sapiens Agenda and Leah on the Offbeat, but it will not include spoilers for Love Creekwood. So with that in mind, I really hope you enjoyed this chat with Becky Albertalli. Hi everyone, thank you so much for joining me. I am joined today by the incredible writer of Love Creekwood. How are you doing?
I'm good. I'm excited to be here.
So if you just really quick before we get started, just let us know your names and pronouns so we know how to address you for this little chit chat.
Yeah, I'm Becky Albertalli and my pronouns are she, her.
Amazing. So first, I wanted to kind of jump in because all month I've been pushing people to buy their books from Karis Bookstore in Atlanta. So I want to know, I mean, obviously that bookstore means a lot to me and I know it means a lot to you and means a lot to us for a lot of personal reasons, but I want to know what Karis means to you and why you chose Karis and why Karis has been so special to you.
I love Karis. I love Karis for so many reasons. One, actually, brand new reason I love them is, oh my gosh, this is like very early in the interview for me to be shady, but I did notice Karis recently decided to take J.K. Rowling off their shelves. And, like anybody who knows me, anybody who's read my books knows that I am a massive, long-time Harry Potter fan. But J.K. Rowling has betrayed the fandom. And I think Karis, this this little bookstore in my hometown has decided to take this stand, and I admire that so much. I'm grateful for it. Like, they have actively decided to prioritize like making their store a safe space for all of their customers and community. So that's just one reason. But yeah, like, and on a personal note too, like Karis, so Karis recently moved from kind of one neighborhood in like Atlanta to another. And it's always been in a much like cooler part of Atlanta. Like, I grew up in the suburbs, I live in the suburbs. Karis is like in town. But I have been going there since I was high school or younger, probably. Like, I'm sure that I went there before I could drive.
And it was in like the
parents.
cool little, it was in the cool little like hipster part of Atlanta, which was always
it was.
awesome.
It was in Little Five Points. Yeah. It was, which I actually wrote about in Simonverse. So in the Simon book, when Simon and Nick and Abby go to like the cool neighborhood Little Five Points in Atlanta, there's one part where they go into a bookstore and Abby buys Simon a book about gay penguins, which is Tango Makes Three. And the bookstore that they go into, which I think will be obvious to anybody who kind of knows the area and just the neighborhood, that was where Karis used to be. So, so they were very clearly visiting that store. And I used to drive down there. It was like, I was scared of driving on the highway when I was a teenager, so I would go surface streets, and I knew like one route, like from my house in Sandy Springs, like in through surface streets, and I would park at Junkman's Daughter, just like Simon and his friends did, and then walk around, and I had my little loops. I have been shopping at Karis for a very long time. I love everything they stand for. I have done some events with them. I've moderated events for Angie Thomas, Nick Stone. I've just, like, it's just, they host a lot of authors whose work I adore and believe in. And yeah, I love everything they stand for. And then, I mean, you should tell the story about kind of how we met.
Oh, well.
You and I.
Yeah. I think it was Small Business Saturday, I believe.
It was, yeah.
And I don't know if you were doing an event, but I was just there with my family shopping. We were wandering around Little Five Points, and we wanted to go to Karis. It's one of my mom's favorite bookstores. And so I always found their little YA section, queer YA section, like in the corner. And I would just like kind of plop there every time we would go. And you were there that day. And I don't know exactly how it happened, but I was asking, I think, one of the employees, like, queer YA suggestions, and they mentioned your book, and they're like, oh, and she's here. And we like chatted for a while, and you signed my book, Don't Kiss with Oreo Breath. And I was like, that's weird. I didn't know what it meant. I didn't know what it meant. And then I read it, and like, I don't know. And this was something I was going to bring up later, but it kind of just turned the tables, at least for my reading history, because I had kind of stopped. I mean, I read all of Alex Sanchez and all of David Levithan growing up, but then like saw like a huge gap in kind of what was there for me and what I saw myself in. And then I read Simon, and a huge eye-opening, like, oh, there are books now that I can read and see myself in. So, and yeah, and so we met on Small Business Saturday in 2015. Was it like an event? I don't even remember. You were just hanging out?
Yeah, it was, well, yeah, so it was Small Business Saturday. And so I was bookseller for a day, which is a huge honor. It's also very humbling because and I've done it a couple times. I've also done it with Little Shop of Stories and stuff. I am a terrible bookseller, and it's not because of like lack of enthusiasm. Like, if you follow my Instagram, you know that like I routinely fall in love with books and like am desperate to talk about them, but I am just really awkward in person. And it is like the most intimidating thing for me, like to, like basically what'll happen is like, a customer will come in, is kind of browsing the shelves, and like booksellers in real life are so good at like turning that moment into like what could be a like life-changing recommendation for the exact book they're looking for. For me, that moment looks a lot like, first of all, I'm kind of like lurking there trying to like work up the nerve to I'm like, Becky, you're not asking them to prom. It does not have to be this hard. Yeah, but I slide in, I'm like the sketchiest dude in my own DMs, just like, hey, like, hey, that's a good book. Absolutely not remembering to like introduce myself or who I am or why I'm there. I'm just like, but I'm like, I'm like, have you heard of The Bells by Danielle Clayton? I'm obsessed with that, and I'm just like doing Danielle no favors, even though I am legitimately obsessed with The Bells, and anybody watching this should go pick up The Bells. Like, that is an incredible series.
It's gotten
like,
to a point where if you talk about a book on your Instagram, it ends up on my TBR, which has just been kind of the rule I live by at this point. And you also talking about, was kind of why I was like, oh, maybe I should talk about books on Instagram. And now here we are.
It makes me so happy. Like, I love, I just like, I love your Bookstagram. I love your channel. And I just like, I love the like very real, sincere enthusiasm that shines through, because it's just like, it's really, really special to see like YA. There's a lot more YA being written in this space than people realize, but there is a very real discoverability problem. It like breaks my heart into a million pieces when people tell me like, thank you for Leah on the Offbeat. I'm so glad there's finally bi representation. And I'm just like, oh my God, no,
hear all of these books.
There's so many good, amazing books out there, just about bi characters. Like, oh my gosh, yeah. So, well, first of all, the most necessary thing to do is to shout out Dahlia Adler's website, LGBTQ Reads.
Yes.
That's like, that is your starting point.
My homepage for many months.
It's what an incredible service. Also, Dahlia Adler is an incredible author. I don't want to spoil anything about her 2021 book, Cool for the Summer, but I have read it, and get ready.
Oh, so great. I'm thrilled. I can't wait.
Phenomenal. is everything you're hoping for. It's like,
well, great. So let's talk about Love Creekwood, because I mean, I've read it multiple times at this point. It's just so special. And we, you know, got to chat with the cast of Love Victor, and, you know, just chatted with last week, the Trevor Project. So there's a lot of really cool conversations happening, but I want to know, like, what is the origin story of Love Creekwood? Because I know you said for years and years and years, I'm not writing anything else. I'm done. The Simonverse is over. And here we are. We have
I know.
Incredible book.
I wasn't lying. I meant it. I really meant it.
And we believed you.
Yeah, I believe myself too. No, it's like, for so many reasons, it felt like kind of the Simonverse had reached its natural endpoint. And that's sort of what I believe, like up until literally February of this year, which I've talked about this only in a couple of places, but just, yeah, I think to even kind of fully explain the origin story of Love Creekwood, I have to give a little bit of background for anybody who might not be familiar with publishing timelines. Typically, when a book sells to a publisher, there's usually like 2 years or something between when the publisher acquires the book and when you see it on shelves. That can vary. A year and a half is not unusual either. A year from sale to shelves is insanely quick. So February to June,
like 4 or 5 months,
unheard of. And it's not that I had written it first and then sold it in February. It was like the idea didn't exist and then it did. I mean, I'm sure on some level it must have existed somewhere, but I wasn't aware of it. Basically, once Love Victor got a release date confirmed by Hulu, and I found out about that just maybe like a day before it went live. So once that happened, that's when kind of internally at my publisher, they were like, okay, so this is like, are we doing a tie-in? Like, what do we need to know as far as our role here? And I was pretty firm, and I've been saying all along, I'm like, I'm not person to write a Victor tie-in. I had some concerns about the idea of having somebody else write a Creekwood book, you know, so it felt like just there wasn't a good way to do a tie-in, which is fine. And, you know, my publisher, like, you know, HarperCollins was absolutely not pressuring me in any way to take on a project that I didn't feel like I know that I couldn't do that story justice. And that's even putting aside the fact that I don't own the copyright to Victor or any of those characters. I can't even write about Ethan from the movie.
Which is the biggest
I know. I know. Yeah, no, I will say there's like one person who I'm like, when I say that I'm not like sure about letting somebody else like write in the Creekwood universe, I'm like, if Clark Moore wants to bless us with the love you, I don't think he owns the copyright either, but like if he can get
but
that,
if anyone
like,
could get it, it would be him.
I trust him completely. He's like, yeah, he can write that Ethan book. He's his writing. I
love Ethan.
Yeah, but yeah, I love Ethan. But yeah, so and there's a way to like, I'm scared to even say this because I feel like this is going to lead to just a flood of like comments begging me to do this, and I'm not going to do it.
And at all that is
but
fun.
there is a way to like go through the legal process and seek permission, which may or may not be granted from Fox or Disney, but it takes a very long time. And it's not a guarantee. And it's not something that we would have been able to start that process in February. Like if it resulted in a tie-in book of some sort, it wouldn't have come out anytime near the show, you know? So basically was kind of one little window of opportunity to celebrate the launch of Love Victor. And like, even to pull this off, I mean, it was miraculous. Like I wrote it in a little over 2 weeks.
Wow.
While I was on book tour and revised it during quarantine. It was like absolutely like just the most frantic pace. Like I've never written like that. I am not a word count person. I do not write that quickly. The Upside of Unrequited took me like 2 years. it was, I mean, and you should ask Aisha, because I was touring with her. Like, we were in like the UK, and every train ride I'm like sitting there writing nonstop.
She's also an icon, so we should just shout her out all the time.
Yeah, Aisha. Keep an eye out too for her Wonder Woman Diana book, which is coming out very soon.
I can't wait.
But yeah, she's amazing. And she also like Love Creekwood would not be there without Aisha just being like my absolute rock. Like, you know, like it was written very quickly, and then it went through edits, kind of back and forth, like a million rounds of edits back and forth with my editor, and then there were copy edits, and the usual kind of behind the scenes publishing process, but everything was hyper accelerated. It's so funny now, people sometimes like, you know, one of the complaints that people like love to like come to you with their complaints about every book. Like, so one of the complaints I keep getting, which is a pretty mild one, I'm like, you know, we'll see what keeps coming in, but people are like, it's like way too short. I can't believe it. And I'm like,
it's a novella.
Oh my God. Like, I'm like, y'all don't even know what a miracle it is that
it happened at all.
Crank that thing out. I'm just like, yeah, no, there was never going to be a universe where that book was going to be a word longer. Like,
was there conversations with the Hulu people and with anyone at Love Victor about how all got tied in?
Early on, we certainly wanted to touch base with Team Love Victor before we even sold it, just to make sure. I think like technically I would have had the right to do it and go rogue on it, but like that's not something I wanted to do. I wanted to be working, like they've been so lovely and you know, have been so respectful of like my intellectual property that of course I wanted to like have them looped in every step of the way. Yeah, I checked in very early, especially with like Isaac Aptaker, Elizabeth Berger, very excited, enthusiastic about it. You know, Isaac happened to mention, I actually did not realize, I had not yet seen the show or anything, so I did not realize exactly when Love Victor took place in the like Simonverse timeline. But he mentioned to me, he's like, Simon and all of them are sophomores in this. And I was like, oh, okay. So I have this like wide open freshman year, that if I choose to, I can use this novella to kind of bridge the gap between Leah on the Offbeat, which is sort of where we left off in the book canon, and Love Victor. I had a lot of feelings about just the idea of me just like releasing a book and profiting off of the release of this show. Like that felt like inappropriate to me under these circumstances. I'm not saying that it would be inappropriate for an author to release a tie-in automatically in every situation if there's like an adaptation coming out, but in this particular situation with this like TV show about a gay Latinx kid, you know, that wasn't even on the table for me. So it was kind of a situation where at the time when I sold it as a book where the proceeds would go to Trevor Project. Like that was always part of the plan. We worked with Trevor Project, you know, I've worked a lot with Trevor Project in the past, so I like knew them, and I know you talked to Caroline, who I adore, and I have been in touch with her for years, and so
that was my very next question, was kind of your relationship with the Trevor Project. I'd love to hear more about that and kind of how that came about and why it means so much to you.
Yeah, well, I love them, and it's it's hard to talk about, like just in the same way that donations for this book were hard to talk about. Like I try to explain it as like I have Jewish feelings about donations and talking about donations like that. I don't know if this is like a universal Jewish thing or if it's just like my Jewish upbringing, but like it was kind of drilled into me. There's this like hierarchy of tzedakah, which is, you know, giving, and you know, like I spend a lot of time kind of obsessing over like the purity of my intentions.
I'm just curious how you have found passion with the Trevor Project, I guess, through your work as well, and kind of what they do kind of maybe simultaneously or at the same time, and maybe intersecting, and the different ways they intersect?
Yeah, well, I think that's such a great question. I think, one thing that comes to mind for me is, I used to be a psychologist. I should mention too, because I get this a lot, and I want to just sort of take a second to clarify. I'm not a psychologist anymore. And the reason for that is I chose to let my license go because it was very clear that if I were to ever practice psychology again, I would need to redo all those credentials anyway to be up to date on training and to be able to provide services ethically. So I let it go, which means I cannot call myself a psychologist. I still have a doctorate. You can call me Dr. Albertalli if you're leaving a bad review. I would appreciate that then. If you, otherwise you don't have to call me doctor. It was a complicated transition going from being a psychologist where, that structure and framework is in place for you to be able to provide that level of support for teens or kids or adults, for your client who, might be in a situation where they are at risk of harming themselves. As an author, I can't do that, and it's very painful. Not painful on the level of what that reader is experiencing, to be very clear, but like it's if I have received various kinds of communication from readers who are in a really difficult place, and it is very hard. I've kind of talked to a lot of other authors about kind of that boundary setting because it's hard not to try to fix it, or even to kind of offer yourself as that support system. But that's really, I believe, this is more than just me who believes this, but that's a dangerous role for a public figure to play with, for an author to take on with their reader, because kind of even if it feels like you're helping, without that framework and structure in place, there is a risk of harm. If you are probably not clinically trained, but even if you are, a couple of us are like do have a therapy background, if you're like me or Sophie or one of the other, but Sophie Gonzalez, who is a brilliant author and also a therapist. But so even if you are a therapist in real life, it's still first of all, you are legally and ethically not allowed to provide that service for anybody who is not your client. That is to protect the client too. And it's so important to protect, especially teens, who are vulnerable to begin with, from just boundary crossing from adults, even well-intentioned adults who don't mean it. And a teen in that situation is extra vulnerable to that kind of boundary crossing. So it's just, there are a million ways that could go down. So if a teen were to reach out to me, like talking about those kinds of feelings and a risk of self-harm, and if I were to try to kind of engage and do interventions and stuff in that moment, like there is going to come a time when this person's needs are kind of beyond what I'm able to provide, or just it just crosses the line into something that isn't quite appropriate engagement, I think, for kind of an adult and a minor on the internet. So it's just basically to kind of be, an ethical former practitioner, and to be kind of an adult, engaging in a community that includes a lot of teens and like all of these other roles that I play, that kind of intervention is just completely off the table. But that desire to like help and to make that pain go away and to engage is there, and it has, it doesn't go away. I've been an author for a long time.
I think things like the Trevor Project are so important, like having that resource to kind of point people to.
Exactly. So like so basically, and I've talked to the team of the Trevor Project about this, but like what they are able to provide is that thing that I used to be able to do to help that I cannot anymore. And they provide it so well. There's so much like care and research and self-assessment and just everything. And I have had the opportunity to speak with Caroline, at some length about just kind of what goes into the interventions that they provide. Like, what does that look like kind of when they're kind of putting that into place? And they are able to provide something that is so much more helpful than what a public figure can give, even if like you really connect with your book, even if kind of it feels like that public figure is the one who can help you, and even if on some level they do really understand, it's just, when it comes time to kind of take those steps toward intervention, life-saving intervention, the Trevor Project has those resources in place, and they have been there for my readers when I could not be.
But also, I want to take that because I was chatting with Caroline, and she was saying something similar, but also about your books, because what the goal with the Trevor Project is to kind of erase that kind of harm and that kind of stigma. And she was mentioning how your books creating the representation and the doors that have opened for other authors to have that representation. It's helping teens see themselves in media finally. And is that something, because you obviously write a ton of queer characters, which I love, and you write such a diverse spectrum of wonderful characters. Is that something you knew you wanted to set out to do?
It's hard to know. It's such an interesting question because I did not expect to be published. Like the odds are pretty low, and a lot of work and craft and skill, and there's also a lot of like luck and timing and privilege. I had the time and space and money that I could take the time to write this book, and among many other privileges. The idea that my books could be a part of that means a lot to me. Certainly do not see it as something that like my books uniquely do. If my books are doing that, they're doing that as part of a very broad and beautiful conversation that I'm not a trailblazer in this space, and and my books are not as inclusive.
But I love to point out, like you just said, yes, of course, you're not like the only one in this conversation, but I think what's so special to me is that your book, happened to be one of the few that really did take off, and it's now this movie and a TV show, but you're using your platform to every day you're uplifting queer artists that are making art for your characters. You're praising other queer authors, and that's just something that I find so remarkable about you. It's just because you're using that platform to uplift, other authors and onto, the platform that you have been blessed to have.
Oh, thank you. Yeah, no, I mean, it's like, I have a lot of like complicated feelings about that. And I think feels like the absolute least I can do. And to be very clear to like, when it comes to like boosting other authors and art and things like that, I'm very much want to support other authors and artists and stuff, but also these are pieces of art that I want my readers to be aware of. Like there's it's it's very much like I love the idea of how the publishing industry has very slowly, but like kind of been moving towards kind of more inclusiveness with authors, which is not because of me. I would, I would immediately, what I think of is We Need Diverse Books and Ellen O and that entire We Need Diverse Books team and kind of everything that's followed and kind of grown from that. There's a ton of work to be done.
You're not being the bookseller, but you're uplifting these books that you love on your social media platforms, which is, pushing them into the hands of the people. Because so many people that when because I ask all the time, like, what was the first queer book that you read? And everyone is always like, Simon. And then they're like, but then I read Simon and I found Becky and I found this whole new world of Phil Stampers and of, Sophie Gonzalez and like all of these beautiful queer authors writing. And it's really, I think, because I see it all the time is, people talking about how now they're so excited that they found all of these new authors in books.
I want to emphasize, like, again and again, like, there are authors out there who are writing possibly the exact book you're looking for. There are authors who are writing things that I cannot write, things that I could never do justice to, things a lot of times they're pulling from their own experiences, either directly or indirectly.
We're getting gay superheroes, we're getting gay wizards, we're getting queer, all these
Mm-hmm.
like it's The Extraordinaries is coming out next week, and that's just so like I think that's like this gay
I've heard that book is so good. I've read it.
It is so good. And like it is so good. I couldn't put it down. Like the fact that we're getting to this place where not only we're getting like queer realistic, but we're getting queer fantasy, like Infinity Sun and The Fascinators, and like it's just amazing the world that is. Yeah, it's just really, really special. Not because I know you don't work as a psychologist anymore, but I want to know, with your experience working with young people and having written queer books, what would you say to a young person that is trying to advocate maybe their teachers or librarians to have more representation in their collections, that maybe they're getting some pushback? What something you'd say?
Yeah, well, I think, and unfortunately that is a thing that happens quite a bit, and it sort of has a particular flavor to it that I think like people don't necessarily think about when they think about censorship. I know that my books in particular, every once in a while they are censored in the way you think of censorship, where like somebody objects. But what's more likely to happen, I think, with books in this space, it will be kind of deemed like not appropriate for 8th grade library or whatever, and so it's like it's a little bit vague, and sometimes it has to do more with language and cussing and things like that. What if you really unpack it, you kind of have to know the context. As if you unpack it and you see, and if you're very familiar with YA, which I am, you'll find that 8th grade library includes a lot of books that have cussing, and they're, and there's only one difference between kind of that book and Simon, at least when it comes to like content. It's pretty eye-opening when you realize that like a nerdy little boy like having a crush on another nerd boy like is content. It's just breathtakingly wrong. But I think I feel like some of those biases are unconscious for some of the kind of people who are in that gatekeeper role making those decisions. And I have so much love and respect for teachers and librarians who are trying to, especially within, the context of an institution, which may have its own problematic guidelines, I see like kind of, this is not, absolutely not to like pin this on teachers and librarians, but I do think it is worth like be aware of those biases. Like if you are telling yourself it is because of the language, cussing, drinking, or whatever, be really honest with yourself about like what kinds of language and, drug and alcohol content do the straight heterosexual romance, cishet kind of romances in your collection. And then, of course, some of it too is just like a lot of, I guess, censorship happens just because, like, they're a library, a school library, for example, a classroom library is not going to hold every single book. You have to be very intentional about the books that you do choose to put on your shelves. And that isn't to say they should be my books. Like, they,
as we've just said, there is a whole rainbow
you know,
spectrum
like,
of
yeah,
incredible literature out there.
yeah, for sure. Yeah. Kind of that self-awareness, that just, critical self-examination of kind of how you make those decisions about curating your school library or classroom library. It's helpful sometimes to have the language, if you are a teacher, librarian, to kind of advocate for including those books in the event that you get pushback from parents or administrators or people like that. Obviously, you can have all the exact right words to advocate for those books, and some people are not going to hear you. And it sucks. Like, one thing that I've found helpful is just to kind of, remind people that there is nothing like inherently less appropriate about one identity versus another. There is this tendency for gatekeepers to conflate anything LGBTQIAP with sexual content, whether sex is present. There's nothing more inherently sexual than, if you have like kind of allo-cishet content. If you have a teacher talking, like a female teacher talking about her husband, and a female teacher talking about her wife, like those are equally non-sexual disclosures,
So I have a couple fun, quick questions before we kind of take it head out. So what character do you think you would be best friends with from Love Creekwood?
Yeah. Oh, that's hard because they're all like kind of my,
your babies.
Like, yeah, like I think Love Creekwood helped like kind of solidify this for me, which is like, it was very, very obvious while writing it that Simon is the closest to like my natural voice. It's like Simon, I was like, oh, a Simon email, I got this, Bram is the most intimidating to write because he's so much smarter than me. And so I've like got to fake that Bram intelligence. I feel like Bram would be my best friend, but Simon would be me.
Now, what about
so.
In the world of the Simonverse that you did not create? That's like, the movie or Love Victor.
Obviously, Ethan and I are super tight. I could see myself I would love to be in that like girl squad with Mia and Lake.
Yes.
I would really have a crush on Felix. Like, I just like, when the character Wendy, is a personal attack. Like, that's me. Like her like talking to herself by name, like Wendy, be cool.
So what is the Creekwood crew doing to cope during quarantine? Other than wearing a mask, everyone wear a mask. But what are they doing to cope during quarantine?
I want to be very clear. Creekwood community, like these kids are wearing masks, but not even that often because they're not leaving their houses. Like
right.
They are like actually seriously quarantined, social distance. They are not doing the like suburban Atlanta thing that everybody in my community is doing, where they're like, oh yeah, no. Like I'm being really safe. I'm going to a lot of restaurants, or I like, no, like these characters came from my brain. So they have built-in anxiety disorders. They're terrified of COVID and they don't leave their houses.
And they're all quarantined.
And that's the only reason they're not constantly wearing masks. I don't know if they're all quarantined together. It's like too many.
Yeah? Okay.
Too many people. They're quarantined maybe in groups of 2 or something, but like, no. They're absolutely not quarantined together. I don't think that is safe right now. We have tons of Zoom days. They email each other. Like,
yes,
nerds.
Of course. That's a fanfic. Yeah, I want to see that.
Yeah.
Yes. So then my last question before we head out is, so we get a little preview of Kate in Waiting. at the end of Love Creekwood. Is there anything, I mean, it's so cute. I cannot wait for it. Is there anything that you want to, I mean, do you want to kind of just plug that a little bit? Because it's so cute. The little like 3 pages we got.
Thank you. I'm excited. I'm nervous. Like, you know, my last 2 like novels have been collaborations, which was just a joy during the writing process and a comfort during the you know, just book release process. And switching back to kind of releasing solo content is very scary for me. Without getting too much into it, like the release of Leah on the Offbeat was really tough for me. Like that's, you know, like that was pretty brutal. So I'm nervous about it. But I you know, I love the little world of Kate and Waiting, and I loved writing it. And I, you know, because I had those collaborations, like kind of, I've been working on it for a long time. Well, these other books kind of were the front burner project, you know, but Kate has been there with me for a minute. And, you know, so I just like, I feel like I know these kids so well. I love them so much. I put so much of myself in that book, which does not make me less anxious. It's very surreal to imagine it like being out there.
Right.
So.
I'm so excited about it. Thank you so much for chatting with me today.
Thank you.
It's been a blessing. You're so wonderful, and I appreciate it.
Lovely. I adore you.
I adore you, so the feeling is very mutual. Thank you. Bye.
Thank you so much. Yeah. Bye.
Thank you so much for joining me. Next week, I'm sitting down with a queer teacher to talk about how these books can have an impact in the classroom and how these books are going to have an impact on young people in general. And I'm very, very excited about that. So please join me next week for that, and I will talk to y'all then. Bye.